The chamber was buzzing that evening, cameras flashing, reporters typing furiously. Congresswoman Maxine Waters rose with a confident smirk, her eyes locked on Senator John Kennedy. She had prepared a long, fiery speech, clearly designed to embarrass him in front of the nation. Her voice rang out with sharp jabs, layered accusations, and biting sarcasm. Each word seemed rehearsed, crafted for maximum humiliation. The room leaned in, waiting for Kennedy's response. For a moment, Kennedy sat silently, his hands folded in front of him, his expression unreadable. Then, when Waters paused to catch her breath, he leaned into the microphone with a calm drawl. "Well, Congresswoman, I appreciate your passion. But passion doesn't replace facts." His words cut through the air like a blade. The chamber grew still. Kennedy continued, dismantling her points one by one with cold precision. He cited reports, pulled direct quotes, and even recited sections of legislation that directly contradicted her claims. Each rebuttal landed like a hammer, not shouted but delivered with a sharp clarity that made them impossible to ignore. The more he spoke, the redder Waters' face grew, her confident smirk replaced by tight frustration. Then Kennedy leaned back and delivered the line that shook the entire chamber: "If your goal tonight was to humiliate me, Congresswoman, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you just managed to humiliate yourself." Gasps erupted, followed by stunned silence. Cameras zoomed in on Waters, her lips pressed tightly together, unable to muster a response. The clip spread online within minutes, flooding feeds with captions like, "Kennedy silences Waters," and "brutal clapback leaves her speechless." Commentators replayed it on every major network, dissecting Kennedy's composure and sharp delivery. What was meant to be Waters' grand moment of dominance instead became Kennedy's viral triumph. As the silence lingered in the chamber, a ripple of murmurs ran through the audience. Some of Waters' allies shuffled in their seats, while others pretended to review their notes, unwilling to meet the cameras. Kennedy, however, remained calm, his posture relaxed, as though he had expected this exchange all along. Reporters in the press gallery scrambled to record every detail. Pens scratched against notepads, and television producers whispered urgently into their headsets, knowing they had just witnessed the start of a viral showdown. Maxine Waters, regaining her composure, cleared her throat and attempted to reclaim the floor. "Senator Kennedy," she said, her tone sharper now, "you can twist words all you like, but the American people aren't fooled by rehearsed lines and selective quotes." She leaned forward, emphasizing each word as if to regain authority. But Kennedy only raised an eyebrow, his expression almost amused. He tapped a thick folder in front of him and replied, "Congresswoman, these aren't my words, these are your words, from last year's committee transcript. And I brought the receipts." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Kennedy flipped open the folder, holding up a highlighted page for all to see. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every line. It wasn't just a rebuttal, it was proof. The highlighted page glowed under the chamber lights as Kennedy read aloud, his voice steady and deliberate. "Congresswoman Waters, you stated, and I quote, 'This policy will benefit our communities in the long run.'" He lowered the page and looked directly at her. "Now tonight, you stand here attacking that very same policy. Which one should the American people believe? Last year's Maxine Waters, or tonight's Maxine Waters?" The room erupted with murmurs, some stifled laughter, others gasps of disbelief. Even members on her side of the aisle shifted uncomfortably, aware that Kennedy had cornered her with her own words. Waters stiffened, her jaw tightening. She attempted a retort, waving her hand dismissively. "That's taken out of context," she began, her voice strained. But Kennedy didn't let her off the hook. He leaned closer to the microphone, his drawl slicing through the noise. "Congresswoman, context doesn't change facts. You can't rewrite the record just because tonight's cameras are rolling." The cameras caught Waters pausing mid-sentence, her lips pressed together as though she realized every word now risked digging her deeper. The audience's attention was locked not on her, but on Kennedy, who had just flipped the entire confrontation in his favor. Maxine Waters clenched her notes, her knuckles tightening as the chamber watched. She wasn't about to back down. With a fiery glare, she leaned toward the microphone and raised her voice. "Senator Kennedy, you can play these little games with quotes all you want. The people know who stands for justice, and it's not you." The words rang out with force, but this time the chamber didn't react the way she had hoped. Instead of applause, there was an uneasy silence, broken only by the clicking of cameras capturing her frustration. Kennedy, calm as ever, waited until the echo of her voice faded. Then he leaned forward, his southern drawl deliberate, each word dripping with confidence. "Congresswoman, I don't play games. I deal in facts. And if standing for justice means contradicting yourself every 6 months, then I suppose you've redefined the word justice." The remark landed like a thunderclap. Gasps and scattered chuckles rippled through the audience. Reporters instantly began typing furiously, knowing that line would headline tomorrow's news. Waters shifted in her seat, clearly rattled. Her eyes darted to her aides, but they could offer no rescue. Kennedy had seized control of the exchange, and everyone in the room knew it. The silence after Kennedy's remark was deafening. Every eye in the chamber now rested on him, waiting for his next move. Waters shuffled her papers, her once confident rhythm broken. Still, she tried to muster a comeback. "Senator," she said with a forced smile, "I will not be lectured by someone who twists debates into circus acts. The American people deserve leaders, not performers." Kennedy tilted his head, his expression unshaken. "Congresswoman," he replied slowly, "if this were a circus, then I'd say you've been juggling contradictions all night." Laughter erupted, louder this time, cutting through the tension like a crack of thunder. Even members of the press struggled to hide their smirks as they scribbled down every word. The phrase was already being clipped for social media in real time. Waters' smile vanished as she leaned back in her chair, visibly fuming. Kennedy, however, stayed perfectly composed, sipping from a glass of water before setting it down as if the exchange hadn't even rattled him. For the first time that evening, it was clear, Kennedy wasn't just defending himself. He was dismantling her strategy piece by piece, and the crowd knew it. The chamber now buzzed with energy, the laughter still echoing as Kennedy calmly adjusted his microphone. Maxine Waters leaned forward again, desperate to regain control. Her voice cut sharply through the noise. "You think this is funny, Senator? While you sit here with your clever little lines, real people are suffering. This isn't about contradictions, it's about lives, and you treat it like a comedy routine." Her words rang with passion, but instead of applause, there was a tense quiet. The cameras focused tightly on Kennedy, waiting for his response. He let the silence linger before replying, his tone steady but cutting. "Congresswoman, I agree, it's about lives. And that's exactly why facts matter more than theatrics. If leaders can't stay consistent, then the people they serve end up paying the price." The remark hit like a hammer, the weight of it sinking into the room. Waters opened her mouth to counter, but her hesitation betrayed her. Kennedy's calm delivery stood in sharp contrast to her fiery outburst, and the audience could feel the shift in momentum. A reporter whispered to a colleague in the gallery, "This is already going viral. Kennedy's got the upper hand." And for the first time that night, Waters' eyes flickered with doubt. Maxine Waters tightened her grip on the desk, her voice rising once more. "Senator Kennedy, you love to lecture, but you've failed to deliver real solutions. People in this country don't need your one-liners, they need results. And history will remember who actually stood up for them." Her words carried fire, echoing across the chamber. For a brief second, it seemed like she had found her rhythm again. A few scattered claps came from her side of the aisle, but the applause was faint, hesitant, almost forced. Kennedy leaned back in his chair, unfazed. He waited until the noise died down before leaning into the microphone, his voice calm yet piercing. "Congresswoman, you're right about one thing, history will remember. It'll remember who promised everything and delivered nothing. And unfortunately, your record speaks louder than your speech. The chamber gasped. Waters froze, her mouth opening slightly, but no words came out. She shifted in her seat, visibly unsettled, as Kennedy's words sank deeper into the silence. Cameras zoomed in on her expression, capturing the exact moment her confidence cracked. Reporters immediately began drafting headlines: Kennedy shuts down Waters, and brutal exchange leaves her speechless. It was clear, her last push had fallen flat. The air in the chamber was electric. Kennedy's words still hung in the silence, and all eyes were on him. Even Waters' closest allies avoided eye contact, knowing the momentum had fully shifted. Kennedy leaned forward again, his tone calm but sharpened like a blade. Congresswoman, the American people are tired of speeches that sound good but solve nothing. They don't need theatrics. They need leaders who tell them the truth, even when it's not convenient. The chamber erupted. Applause broke out from one side, while the press gallery filled with the frantic tapping of keyboards. The contrast was undeniable: Waters' fiery outbursts versus Kennedy's measured, unshakable delivery. Waters raised her hand, as if to respond, but her hesitation betrayed her. She looked down at her notes, flipping through pages that no longer held weight. The cameras caught every second of her faltering composure. Kennedy then added, almost as if sealing the moment, "So if your plan tonight was to humiliate me, Congresswoman, I'm afraid all you've done is prove my point, for everyone watching." The word struck like a hammer, followed by a roar of gasps, whispers, and even laughter. The clip was destined for every news broadcast and social media platform within the hour. The chamber erupted into chaos, gasps, murmurs, and even muffled laughter swept across the room. Reporters leaned over the railings of the press gallery, already dictating headlines into their recorders. Camera flashes lit up like fireworks, catching every flicker of Waters' face as her confidence dissolved under the spotlight. On her side of the aisle, a few colleagues tried to clap in support, but the attempt fizzled as the energy of the room pulled against her. On Kennedy's side, however, staffers exchanged knowing glances, some barely containing their smiles. Cable news producers in the gallery whispered furiously into earpieces. One muttered, "This is going live in 10 minutes. It's gold." Another replied, "This clip will be everywhere by morning." Waters tried to sit taller, to reclaim the aura of control she had entered with, but the tension in her jaw betrayed her. She gripped her notes so tightly that the pages bent under her fingers. Kennedy, by contrast, looked utterly relaxed, almost detached, as if he knew the outcome was already sealed. He reached for his glass, took a slow sip of water, and set it down with the composure of a man who had already won. The audience waited, breathless, knowing one more strike from him could end the exchange entirely. The silence felt heavy, almost theatrical. Kennedy adjusted his papers, glanced briefly at the cameras, then leaned into the microphone with the calm confidence of a man who knew he held the room in his palm. "Congresswoman," he began, his drawl deliberate, "you walked in here tonight determined to make me look small. But here's the truth, when the facts came out, the only thing that shrank was your argument." The chamber exploded. Gasps and bursts of laughter echoed through the hall, drowning out even the shuffle of papers. Reporters nearly leapt from their seats, tapping furiously at their keyboards as the line ricocheted across the chamber. Waters froze. Her lips parted, but no words emerged. The cameras caught her blank stare, her silence louder than any speech she could have given. Kennedy didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and simply waited, because he didn't need to say another word. The damage was done. The viral moment had just been sealed. Within minutes, the chamber wasn't just buzzing, it was a storm. Reporters rushed into the hallways, phones glued to their ears, already dictating breaking news updates. On social media, clips of Kennedy's line were uploaded in real time, spreading like wildfire across every platform. "Kennedy flips the script on Waters" trended within the hour. Networks replayed the moment on loop, each anchor dissecting how he had turned her attempted takedown into his triumph. Pundits on rival channels, usually critical of Kennedy, begrudgingly admitted he had dominated the exchange. Outside the chamber, cameras swarmed Kennedy's staff. One aide smirked and told a reporter, "The senator doesn't need theatrics. He just needs the truth." Meanwhile, Waters' aides hurried her past the press, avoiding questions, their expressions grim. Hashtags exploded, hashtag Kennedy Clapback and hashtag Speechless climbed into the top spots online. Comment sections filled with viewers marveling at how calm and devastatingly precise Kennedy had been. For Waters, the silence that followed her stumble was louder than anything she had said all night. For Kennedy, it was the sound of victory. Behind closed doors, the mood was nothing short of explosive. Waters stormed into her office, slamming her stack of notes onto the table. Her aides trailed in behind her, silent and tense. One finally broke the silence. "Congresswoman, maybe we can issue a statement tomorrow too." She cut him off sharply. "A statement? Do you realize what just happened in there? That man humiliated me on live television." Her voice shook with anger, but also something rarer, unease. She paced the room, replaying the exchange in her mind, each line from Kennedy echoing louder than the last. Her aides avoided eye contact, some nervously typing on their phones, already seeing the headlines flood in. Meanwhile, across the building, Kennedy's team was calm, even celebratory. Aides gathered around a laptop, watching the clip rack up thousands of views by the minute. One chuckled, "Senator, you didn't just win that exchange, you turned it into history." Kennedy, ever composed, simply nodded. "I don't celebrate silencing anyone. But if you step into the ring with falsehoods, you better be ready for the truth." The contrast couldn't have been starker, one side scrambling to recover, the other already shaping the narrative. By nightfall, every major network was replaying the clash on a loop. The cheering at the bottom of the screen blared, Kennedy's clapback leaves Waters speechless. Analysts broke down the moment frame by frame, pointing out the instant when her confidence cracked and his composure cemented the win. Commentators across the spectrum chimed in. Some called it a masterclass in debate control, others admitted, love him or hate him, Kennedy owned that exchange. The clip dominated late-night talk shows, where hosts played it with booming laughter, replaying his mic drop line to roaring studio audiences. Social media turned it into a cultural moment. Memes popped up instantly, Kennedy calmly sipping water while captions mocked Waters' silence. Influencers reposted the video with reactions, each adding to the tidal wave of attention. For millions watching at home, the story wasn't about policy anymore, it was about the spectacle. Kennedy's calm precision versus Waters' fiery stumble had become the defining image of the night. And in politics, perception was everything. By the end of the news cycle, one fact was clear: Kennedy hadn't just won an exchange. He had won the narrative. The next morning, Maxine Waters appeared on a morning news program, determined to rewrite the story. She spoke firmly, insisting that Kennedy had distracted from the real issues, and that her passion was for the people, not for soundbites. But as the interview aired, live comments on the screen told a different story. Viewers weren't buying it. Most mocked her attempt to shift the narrative, flooding the feed with quotes from Kennedy's clapback. Meanwhile, Kennedy gave a short, composed interview on the Capitol steps. Reporters swarmed him with questions, but he kept his tone measured. "I wasn't there to embarrass anyone," he said. "I was there to remind Congress, and the American people, that facts matter. If that leaves someone speechless, well, that's not my doing." That clip went viral instantly, solidifying his win. By noon, his remarks had millions of views, while Waters' rebuttal barely registered. Commentators across the board admitted it: her attempt to humiliate Kennedy had backfired spectacularly. By the end of the day, the moment was immortalized, Kennedy's calm dismantling of Waters replayed everywhere, while her silence stood as the lasting image. She had tried to humiliate him. Instead, his brutal clapback left her speechless, sealing a political showdown that the nation would not soon forget.